Hello and welcome at Book Lovers Companion. My name is Edith and right next to me is my lovely co-host, the Chattering Teacup.
Hello.
And here with us from cold and slightly snowy upstate New York, Rima Ray. Hello Rima and welcome at Book Lovers Companion.
Hey Edith, nice to be here. I'm so excited to join you guys.
So are we, because your first book came out only last year.
Yes.
Ruby Roy and the Murder in the Falls. It's a cozy mystery about a university professor who is a little bit reluctant to become a sleuth. Tell us about Ruby Roy and her sleuthing.
Well, I think Ruby Roy is pretty much loosely based on me. I am a professor in upstate New York, as you guessed. And I kind of now moved to Buffalo, but I was located very close to the falls when I was writing this book. It was during the pandemic. I have been a lifelong mystery fan. If you see, you don't see it behind me because I've blurred it right now so that there's any mess that you guys notice, but I have like my bookshelf lined with all of Agatha Christie's novels and Sherlock Holmes and you name it. Like mysteries have been sort of my passion, right? In fact, it's my go-to genre. If there's one subscription I have, it's investigation discovery, and I've watched everything. Who Did I Marry? Killer Instincts, Family, this, that. So I enjoy it. And mostly from just a human curiosity perspective of, understanding what people do and why. So when the pandemic happened, I sort of had that phase, which all of us went through. We were reflecting. Maybe people picked up new hobbies and all. And I just felt I think because there was so much sadness around us and everybody was going through so many of their own struggles. I was reading mystery books, but one of the things with the mystery genre and even with the crime fiction genre, it tends to be very dark. At times it can be very depressing to see, negative things happen to people. And I was like, why don't we have something that can be joyful and funny and silly, at the same time having sort of, that cozy mystery that we love with Agatha Christie and all. Yep. So I, as a lover of human psychology, I was like, okay, what if I base it a bit on me? Because I don't see right? I don't see so many characters that are Indian, but that are kind of global because I'm Canadian as well, but I'm of Indian origin. I'm an immigrant in the United States. I'm now working as a professor. So I was like, this could be the start of something. Of course, just want to say disclaimer, anybody reading the book, this is not me. So please don't think that I'm going around being as whatever, however you see Ruby Roy, that's obviously, exaggeration. There's a lot of I'm providing her with a lot of things to make her funny and lovable. But yeah, that was the inspiration. So then, pretty much I am a business school professor, much like Ruby Roy. So I had a lot of access, the department, the way a small university in upstate New York runs. My husband is I wouldn't say he's Cleo, but kind of inspired by him. And the two cats, you guys can't see it, but Million and Nobel, they haven't sued me yet, so I've kept their names as is. So I was like, you guys are just as you are in my debut book. So yeah, that was the inspiration for Ruby Roy. And once I started writing it, it was a lot of fun. And I think what I wanted to do was I wanted to have a relatable sleuth, right? Not just keep it funny, but somebody, because when you think of it, and I know you guys, if you're watching a mystery story, you're like, yeah, this is how I would do it. And, why didn't this detective figure this out? So we're very critical, right? As readers and viewers. But if a real mystery happened and there was a murder that was discovered and the police came to our door, I think most of us would be like, I want to get out of this as soon as possible. I want nothing to do with this. Should I be moving the neighborhood? So I wanted to capture a very realistic scenario where someone who loves mysteries is in her own mystery. And now she's like, I don't want this.
True. It's one thing to read about it. It's another thing to experience it. Absolutely.
And it's also interesting that your character relaxes after witnessing a murder by watching. murder on TV.
Yes. I mean, why not? It can be relaxing. It always depends on what kind of mystery you watch.
That's true. That's true. I think, yeah. No, I think I do relax. Like, at the time I was watching Father Brown. So I do relax watching these things. And to me, it's different, right? Like you see something fictional versus something that's real and traumatic, which Ruby is seeing. So, yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to say unless people love mysteries the way I do. And I'm sure there's some of us who love it. And so for us, it is relaxing. I mean, I could read an Agatha Christie novel. It's not like I have to suddenly watch cartoons. But yeah, I think that is Ruby Roy being true to herself. But yeah.
Yeah, true. I mean, Agatha Christie, she's not as bloody as other authors.
I think it's more about the puzzle in her
It's more about the puzzle. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. I mean, you said, however, one would describe Ruby Roy. I mean, I would describe her as lovely,
nice.
a good sense of humor,
maybe
quirky, a bit nerdy, and a tiny bit accident prone.
Yes, very much accident prone. I think Ruby, I'm sure there's a side to me that's there. I mean, obviously she's a definite character. But I think there's always a side to us. What I wanted to give Ruby in her characterization, like the way you're describing, and thank you that you found her lovely, is I wanted to give her some innocence. I think one of the things we have a lot with what I see with sleuths, or I see with these amateur sleuths even, they're very mature, they're very confident, they're very like like just about to chase the criminal. Sometimes you even think you see them trespassing, taking unnecessary risks. Whereas Ruby, I think she's a child at heart. She's a very educated person, but she doesn't take herself very seriously. Like in her personal life, she's unapologetic about being goofy, about liking Disney, about liking movies. And I think somewhere there are people, I mean, irrespective of age, I know, obviously she's a little bit older, like she's 29, but irrespective of age, I think she has an innocence and a joie de vivre, as we say, where she keeps her life very simple, and so I think the quirkiness and of course she's anxious. She's an anxious person. So she's like, and I mean, I won't lie. Even now we have a new house right now. And I'm like, okay, all the security, the ring alarms, like we are all a little bit security conscious. Ruby, of course, takes it to the next level with her paranoia. But I don't know. I think somewhere there is a comedy to be found. Even in people's fears and phobias, right? Sometimes if you can laugh at yourself and say, hey, yeah, I am overthinking this, but
As you mentioned, overthinking, she has a tendency to follow her thoughts to the regard that she doesn't know where she is anymore. Yeah. Do you also tend to do that?
Yeah. I think for me, I think I think a lot, for sure. Like I'm a thinker. I'm an introvert. I'm the person who wants my hot chocolate and my little brownie, and I'm reading a book. And I think, you know what? Like we're all armchair. I mean, I don't know. I'm guessing this about you. I could be wrong, but I think a lot of us who are readers, a lot of us are like armchair psychologists. We like to sit and we are like, I wonder why this person is doing this. And I got these clues. And you know what I mean? So with my close friends, I would say, there is a lot of that type of thinking where you're like looking at different perspectives. Is it this? Is it that? I obviously feel like I'm not as worried as Ruby tends to be, where she's like, there's a ghost and this, and like, so she's a lot more, I think, goofy in the sense where her silliness, and sometimes her tendency to exaggerate the situation, really does make her kind of like what you would consider like a bit clueless. But I do think that overanalyzing things, like sometimes even when, let's say you get if you're working with someone and they don't respond to an email. And you're like, oh, I wonder what's going on. And it's taking them. So that type of, I think I played on that a little bit more with Ruby. Yeah.
And would you say that her Indian heritage is also a major part of the way she behaves and thinks?
I think definitely her relationship with her parents comes a lot from what I have done with my parents. I mean, I know that they have I don't know how much people know about Indian families or Indian parents, but Asian parents, they have been known to be like the tiger mom, tiger dads. Education is a priority.
Yeah.
You have to get into the best schools. You have to do well. So Ruby, as an only child, much like me, has very, how do I put it? Maybe slightly overbearing parents. Loving, but sometimes a tad bit controlling. And I think Indian readers, I hope, or even minorities where they maybe in Latin America and people where they live in families and family plays a big role, even as they become adults in decision making and all, might be able to relate with how involved Ruby's parents are in her life.
But But what I found interesting, now that you said it, involved, it's a good way to put it, involved in the lives. But what I found interesting is Ruby's mom. I mean, she isn't Indian, and yet she is more Indian than her father.
Yeah. That is sort of interesting because I feel like my mom is somewhat similar, and that's I think that was just sort of a thing I've observed, even with mixed parents, like Ruby is of mixed race, and I have a lot of friends who are of mixed race. And it's interesting that I think obviously in Indian culture, moms tend to be very involved to begin with. But I also think it's a personality trait, right? I mean, I didn't go too much into Ruby's mother's background, but it is a little bit how she is as a person. She's a bit overprotective. I think people might see similarities with Jewish moms and all that. So if I didn't go into Ruby's mom's maybe cultural reasoning to be this way. But yeah, she is an overprotective mom, and she definitely doesn't cut Ruby any slack.
That's true.
We can just say that,
That's true. I mean, you said Ruby is very relatable. I fully agree. She's absolutely relatable. And my question would also be, I mean, she's not a superhero, which is wonderful. And is academia really that murderous?
Oh, no, I think that's the funny part. I think academia has the sort of the external impression of being a very docile, stable. People get tenured, they stay for years. You can work when you're 65, 70. Not much is happening in your life, just cozy families and people doing their jobs. But having said that, academia can be very competitive. Academia, from where I have seen, I mean, I had the privilege to go to some of the like really good schools in US, Canada. There is a lot of pressure on professors. I didn't explore that angle, of course, but there is a lot of, surprisingly, because you're dealing with human beings a lot, with students and all, there are issues that do happen. And even in our school, and I'm sure in the past 2-3 years with the cultural, I would say, consciousness of people kind of coming up, there have been many incidents in academia where professors and students had to struggle with some very tough issues. And I think it's this role that we have as educators, you know, what is your, like, how flexible are you to change and evolve with changing times and how, what priorities students have and their needs. So I do think that it's a very murky job. And I do think that there are, depending on people, and there's a lot of ego involved. Let me put it that way, if that sort of helps too, because a lot of people who are very educated, who also take themselves very seriously, sometimes I think that power dynamic, that power asymmetry between students, professors, junior colleagues, senior colleagues, because of that hierarchical bureaucratic structure, does manifest itself in some very tricky problems. Of course, it doesn't get as much attention because it's not one of the media covered industries, if you would say, unless like a scandal happens, which we have seen, unfortunately, in the global news in the last couple of years.
Yeah, true. And since writing this cozy mystery and being an academic yourself, what came as the biggest challenge for you when you wrote this book? I mean, writing an article for a academic journal is something completely different. So what came as a huge challenge when writing this book compared to being an academic and writing for journals?
I'll be honest with you, definitely enjoyed more writing this book compared to writing for because that's definitely, like you said, it's structured in a way to be very formal. There are lots of things where, you have to show what knowledge you're disseminating. The challenge comes for me in making sure that I would say, okay, there are twofold challenge of writing fiction, and particularly mystery fiction. So one is when you're writing a mystery fiction, like I'm doing a whodunit. And this was something I've discussed maybe with friends and family also in the past year. That comes with its own unique structure. You need to set it up with a crime occurs. Typically, if you go, and here we have a traditional sleuth, a reluctant, but a traditional sleuth trying to solve it. You need to have your witnesses. You need to have your suspects. You need to also have clues that go throughout the narrative so that readers can guess. And you don't want to give too much away because then you might ruin the surprise. So that in itself fundamentally, compared to other forms of fiction, is its own unique challenge. And I'm sure, I was reading some diary. I think I recently purchased it, and I was reading notes that Agatha Christie would write when she's structuring her mystery, like a new mystery. And she'd be like sketching out rooms. These are suspects. So you very much are creating this world, and you have to kind of work with those constraints. So that has its own unique challenges, and I'm still learning that because obviously this is my debut book. So there are things I'm like, oh, okay, next time I'm going to do this differently, or I'm going to. Then there is the other, I think, challenge which came from writing humor. It's one of the things I've learned from because I obviously when you write from your point of view, what you find funny. And you're like, this is hilarious. I love it. And this would make me laugh. Or if I'm a visual person, so I usually imagine the scenes and I'm like, this would be hilarious. I'm seeing it come to life. And humor is very subjective. So one of the things I've learned after writing this book is that, it's a very tricky thing. Like you think humor is easy. And sometimes these types of books that appeal to a lot of people, like you said, the relatability is a great thing. But it's also something where somebody could be like, I don't find this funny, because that is their subjective sense of humor. So for me, the hard part was, again, where do you infuse humor while you're working with the structure of a traditional whodunit? And finding that balance, because you need to take the story forward. You also need to have funny things. So do you, so those decisions, I think, and also while being sensitive, because for me, the goal, I had a larger vision, as we say in my business classes, we say, I had a larger vision when I wrote the book. And my goal was to make people, it's just something silly. It makes you happy, but it's not meant to offend anybody. It's not meant to upset anyone, right? And so I think in today's climate, if you want a book that's internationally open for everybody to read and enjoy, that's why for me, the innocence in Ruby Roy was so important. Like it may not, because I just want people to take their minds off for a bit, maybe just not think too much and just have a little bit of fun and relax. So there is a silliness to it. So that humor, making sure that the comedy I'm putting out is also sensitive to making sure that it doesn't upset anyone. And so all of those thoughts I had to keep in mind. I didn't have to. I don't think every writer does. But as a human being, that's just who I am. So I want to make sure people reading my book are like, okay, I like it or I don't like it, but I'm not upset because of what you said. Yeah.
And how hard is it to write the story, have humor in it, and still try to have all the different points of views in your mind to not try to offend someone? To constantly think about that.
To be fair, I think I just am that kind of a person, so that helps. I think I naturally, in my life, I try to be the best human being I can, with people I am around with, whether it's students or faculty. I think my goal is always to make sure that I'm compassionate and make sure that while I'm educating students, I want them to have a positive experience with all that. So that's just inherently my values. So that wasn't too hard for me. But again, what is funny, right? To create something funny while being cognizant of that is something that definitely at times I had to pause, right? Because you have a campus here. I mean, hoping you guys have obviously read the characters and everything. So there's a campus with people from many different cultures.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to talk about the cultures without making sure like I'm culturally sensitive as well. So those things I tried to kind of, think about. There was a little bit of research I also tried to do to see, again, what is specific to people's cultures and backgrounds. I had a big help because with my faculty here, I have colleagues who are very good friends from Korea or from Africa. So that definitely helped a little bit, but yeah.
Now that you mentioned it, were they happy to be in your book?
I mean, to be fair, I didn't base it off anybody in the book. So all the nationalities you see are not represented on my campus. I was like, nobody come back and tell me this is me because it wasn't you. But yeah.
So the only ones who could have a beef with you are the kids.
I think so. I think if they read it, they might be very offended, particularly some of the jokes I made on their behalf. So thankfully, they blissfully don't care. So
and just in case, just have enough treats at hand.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, no. I think it's just the treats and they're like, book? What book?
Just keep my bowl filled and everything is good. Yeah. You just mentioned the rules that are involved when writing a mystery. Would you say that mysteries, when we write them, when we read them, especially for you as an author, they start their own kind, or they have their own kind of world building? I mean, we know that from fantasy and sci-fi, but wouldn't it also be true for crime, for mysteries?
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. They have their own kind of world building. And like I said, there are lots of mysteries these days, which I think my next book that I'm currently working on I obviously have plans for Ruby Roy as a sequel, but the next book I wanted to do something different. And that's more of like the one that I'm working on, which is tentatively titled Be Afraid of the Dark. That's much more psychological horror, where I don't have these constraints, right? Like the world building that you have to do with the mystery, because if you go with that set structure, whether it's a detective who has legitimacy because they're a police authority, or it's someone like a Sherlock Holmes who's a consultant, that world building there are some given rules, and you can break the rules. I'm not saying that there are not people who break the rules and insert individuals, but I think readers who are like big fans of the genre, they can become very upset if you try to change things too much, and they question the logic of it. And I think it's maybe a little bit of a burden having such great writers like Agatha Christie, like Conan Doyle, who have sort of set the parameters of how things work. That I think it takes an immense amount of planning if you want to keep it intelligent. So one of the difficulties, I wouldn't consider it a difficulty, it was a bit of a challenge, because I'm so passionate about mysteries, is again kind of making sure that it realistically makes sense. Because like with fantasy, you come up with something, you don't necessarily need to justify it, right? Because this is a fantasy. This is about exploring a world, a dimension beyond the what you can perceive, what is visible. With a mystery that's rooted in reality, with current technology, most people who love mysteries, I would imagine, are like me, watching ID channel, and they're like, this is not gonna work, like unless you set it as something in the 80s or 70s when cell phone technology tracking, all of that is not available. So I think somewhere the world building that you have to do has to be somewhat connected with real life investigations and what is happening. If you want your story to be logical. And that was something that was important for me, because I don't think, like, because I read so much and I see so much, if somebody gives me a mystery where I'm like, how did this happen? This doesn't make any sense. I know I would be the one speaking out, so can't afford to make that same mistake.
So basically, it would be good for authors who want to write a mystery to not insult the intelligence of their readers, because, like you said, I believe that mystery readers are have a very keen eye on details, and, like you said, what is working and what is not working.
It may be because you're always trying to look for clues.
Yeah, probably.
So you might look for more for the details than in another novel.
I think it's one of the most interactive genres. It's one of the genres with mystery where you're actually, as a reader, not passively reading things and absorbing things, but you're actually actively involved in your reading experience. In that sense, it's a bit like a puzzle. I think one of the things I love mysteries for, and I think a lot of people love mysteries, is we love puzzles. And we like to solve what happened, who did it. And so that's why the narrative structure of the world building has a formula, because it works, right? To kind of give you a little bit of hint and clues, some motivations and backgrounds, and in the end, do the big reveal, right? Because that's how we do solve puzzles. We're like, okay, eliminate this person, eliminate that. Okay. So there is I don't want to make it seem like it's mathematical or anything, but there is a certain process, which is why it's so much satisfying for readers at the end when they're like, oh, I didn't see it coming. So they are expecting the shock. But yet it has to be somewhat justified.
Yeah, true.
But on the other hand, I think often you don't guess it, but sometimes it's just nice to guess it. Yes, I got it.
I know, that is true. That is true. But you know what is funny is that because, like, I know with Agatha Christie, I've read all her books, right? I mean, I'm using one author whose every book almost I've read. Sometimes it is unfortunate when you read too much and you start seeing how the person makes it work. So there have been times even with her, and because she's been so prolific, which is incredible, I don't know if I could keep up with this particular, like we said, the constraints or the rules of the traditional sleuth genre. I mean, how she did it, but you can start seeing patterns. And that becomes a challenge for a writer, right? With Agatha Christie, there is, in a weird way, there's almost a need for some academic knowledge. Like for her, she had to do a lot of research on poisons. So one of her MOs was always the strychnine and all. And because she had that nursing experience, I think from World War II, she was able to use that. Oh, sorry, World War I. I'm sorry. She was able to use that intrinsic knowledge she had in her mysteries. And I think that became the challenge for her, like people reading and being, I guess that. And then how do you up that? For the next one.
Yeah, true.
So it's,
I mean, wasn't there a conversation at an event we heard when they spoke about Agatha Christie and her knowledge of, like you just said, poisons and so on, and how interesting that was. It is not just plucked from thin air. I mean, she knew what she was doing. And like you said, she had these diary entries. And a lot of mystery writers have their own, let's call them, what does Mari call it, her murder wall? Do you also have a murder wall where you put your suspects and your ideas and, like you said, the places and so on?
I mean, I haven't gone that far to create that. I mean, I think that takes a lot of work. Maybe at some point, I think, if the expectations rise for me in terms of what readers are wanting, I might need to start actually working like a detective and keep my wall and my suspects. But for now, it's just diary. I have diaries, and I still use like my pen here and my notebooks, and I take notes. So I do it the old-fashioned way. But yeah, who knows? Who knows? Maybe.
Apart from the length of the work, what do you need more planning? For the novel or for an academic?
I think for me, it's both, right? So I feel like, can you repeat your question? Sorry, one sec. I got a bit distracted with the cat.
What in your case does need more planning? Writing a novel or writing an academic article?
I think definitely a novel requires a lot of plan because never mind. She doesn't want to go. That's Nobel. If I see her, I'll show her to you. But I think a novel does require a lot of planning because obviously from start to finish, you have to map out multiple characters. Like right now with Ruby Roy, I've not come to the process of writing it out, but I have a draft synopsis I've created. And so I had to start creating, these are the characters I'm going to have. The setting, if you remember reading the end, she goes to Hawaii. So this is going to be set in Hawaii.
Yes.
You
take it up. You take it up. Sorry, you take it up where you left it in the second book, I suppose, because that was my impression when I came to the end. So, so now I want to read on.
In that way, you make it more difficult for yourself because
and for me as a reader.
Because what I meant is to wait because she sets it somewhere else. You can't build on the characters you already have, so you have to introduce new characters and backstories.
I think so, but I think that part of it for me is actually the exciting part also, because I feel, and I can share this with you guys, it's not something I'm keeping secret because I have 2 more in my website as well. I plan to take Ruby sort of international. I do want her globetrotting because that's the experience I grew up with. Like I lived in 10 different countries when I was growing up, like Philippines, Qatar, Kuwait, Japan, and I was in 2 different disasters. I don't know I shared that in the book, but at the end or whatever, but I was in the Gulf War in 1991. So we got stuck as refugees in the Jordan Azra camp and we were airlifted by the Indian government. And then in Japan, I was in the triple disaster when it was like the 2011. So for me, there is an excitement to have Ruby go to these countries, explore these countries, not trying to make the book about travel, but I think it's just such a fundamental part of how I see the world as a global family that I want Ruby to go, like whether go to Germany, go to Italy, go to different countries and meet different people. Yeah. Because somewhere, I don't know if this is the educator in me speaking, and not that I'm saying that people who choose to stay in one place, of course, I know I'm lazy too. Sometimes you want to stay back. But I think as a reader, if you can open your eyes, particularly in America, a lot of people don't get the opportunity to travel. And it could just be because of financial constraints and whatnot. And so I do want to open up my readers, especially here in the West, to the rest of the world, because there is such a immense amount of culture and beauty and diversity. So for me, the Hawaii thing is just like still within the US, but it's a little bit of a different culture. And I went to Hawaii before the pandemic. And I loved it, of course. I also have a colleague, sort of a faculty colleague who's there. So for me, I was like, this could be exciting, to set it in a new place. But that comes with a lot of work. You're right. I have taken on a challenge. I do like diverse characters. So you can expect to see people who are from many different parts, which is like America. It's a melting pot. So you will see a lot of diversity. But that's also going to be the fun.
True. And Ruby's obviously not falling into a volcano on Hawaii.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Nothing. Not yet. Who knows? Maybe if I get too annoyed by her, I'm like, push you off.
No, I don't think so.
She might nearly fall in and be rescued by someone who looks like a superhero.
Oh.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe you have something there.
And are you then a planner yourself? Or are you a pantser? You're a planner.
I'm a planner. I'm a planner. Okay. I'm a planner. I think though, as we say, the best laid plans, they don't always work out.
Yes.
But I do try to plan, and I think my spouse or my partner, my husband, he's very chill, much like Cleo. So he's not too interested in the planning. So it's usually left to me to do all the.
Yeah. Okay. Is he like Cleo a bit? Oh yes, darling. Yes, you do that.
He's definitely, I think that's the other person who can sue me. Thankfully, he cares for me enough not to, but he is very similar. And we did meet in Montreal when I was doing my PhD, and he's the opposite. So I'm very chatty, as you guys can see. I'm happy to talk, and I can talk for hours, and he's the opposite. He has very little to say, but as they always say, when people say little, what they say might be very precious and maybe important.
True.
You should listen.
Yes, my dear, I do. I do. You said your favorite is Agatha Christie, obviously, because on your website you have the picture of you and behind you on the wall.
Oh, yeah, her in the back.
Yes,
You noticed
there,
that? Yeah,
yeah, of
yeah.
course. There she is, the number one, the queen of crime. I mean,
yeah.
And you also mention Poirot, Marple, and Holmes, of course. So, do you think of Ruby as a combination, one way or the other, of those three characters?
No, I think Ruby is definitely not them. But what Ruby is, what I would take away if there's a trait. So the way I describe Ruby, even on the site is, or Amazon, or even in terms of the book summary, she's more like a Bridget Jones, if you remember Bridget Jones's Diary. Very silly, very kind of self-deprecating, in her head a lot. But she has a bit of Marple in her. What I mean by that is definitely Marple is a very, calm, serious, sweet little lady. But she's somebody who observes human psychology a lot. And I think Ruby is also very sensitive to people and her relationships kind of, because she doesn't have a crime background. It's not like she's done forensic science or a PhD in psychology, but she's she cares about people deeply, and her intuition about human beings sort of sometimes helps her navigate.
I mean, she has traits of all of them, I guess, because she has a sharp mind. She does, like you said, observe people, like Miss Marple does. And she's also a bit, like you said, sometimes a bit the odd one out, like Poirot. And he gets underestimated because of that. He's the foreigner, and because of that, people underestimate him.
And she also has a sidekick.
And she has a sidekick. I mean, she has more than a sidekick. Ruby has 3 sidekicks, her husband and the cats.
I was talking about the husband.
So, okay. Sorry. I thought the cats, it would be appropriate to mention them as well. But unlike Miss Marple, although, like you said, Miss Marple, from the psychological point of view, she observes people and she recognizes characters. Ruby is, like we said before, an innocent. Miss Marple isn't an innocent one. I mean, Miss Marple has this, how shall I put it? She says, there was one line, although I'm not sure if it's in the book, but it's definitely in the TV show, where she says, it's dangerous to believe what people say. I haven't done so for years.
She's a bit of a cynic.
Yeah, indeed she is. I mean, she has learned. I mean, she's also older than Ruby. Ruby's still young, and
it's a life experience.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. No, Ruby, I think in that sense, you're right. Ruby is an optimist, and Ruby is, the way I see Ruby, I mean, like I said, there are sides to all of us. Like, Ruby is a child woman in many ways. She's an intelligent child woman, but she's absent-minded in a very stereotypically professor way that we think of. But she actually, I think she lives with her heart. I think a lot of the things, even when you see in her, with her interactions, even at the end, some of the things she does, not coming from a place of being, like you said, the intrepid or the brave sleuth like a Sherlock Holmes would be, but coming from a place of love and compassion, which sometimes pushes us to do extraordinary things beyond what you would give her credit for, right? So Ruby, I think, is an empath. She's a compassionate person. She loves human beings. She loves deeply, and she's also okay losing in love, right? So she's one of those people where even if she had, and I'm hoping to explore a little bit of that maybe in the second book, even though, and we talk about that, like she's had her heart broken, she's had exes, but it's like she sees sort of somehow she's able to bounce back and still see the bright side of life. She's still able to see life with rose-colored glasses. And in that sense, she's not a cynic.
Yeah,
she doesn't let the, whatever, like even if people cheat her, she's still like, hey, this could still be a new person and I'll still give them a chance. So, I mean, that's not to say she's stupid, but she is, I think, she's, I think, willing to see the beauty in other human beings, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, probably also this love for other people is the reason why she rises to the occasion.
Yeah. I would agree. I think so. I think she, and I would say that maybe a little bit of foreshadowing there, but I think even with the motivation because she never wants to be a sleuth. See, like her, I think her, even her recognition, becoming a sleuth through this journey, a very reluctant journey, came out of desperation.
Yeah.
Right? It comes from a place of desperation where I think, or at least I believe, if I were in her shoes, or if any of us were, we're like, I need to save myself before I am next on this list.
Yeah. Yep.
And I need to protect people I care for. And so that is what pushes her. And I think there is a comedy side to that, and there's also a very human side to that. So the comedy side is because she's reluctant. I kind of imagined, where people expect all this from you. Oh, you're so brave, or you're so, and then Ruby's like, I'm really not. It's sort of like a constant struggle to be like, I want to meet your expectations, but I am scared of this, that, and everything.
So why did she get at the people in the end? I mean, like Poirot does to reveal the culprit. Why does she get at them where she gets them? I mean, that's dangerous for a woman like her.
I know, but I mean, obviously you've read it. So, but I think there's obviously some help there to help her create that situation.
Yeah.
And I don't think she would have done what she did, as you were saying, had it been her own idea. I think she would have probably been like, okay, I am just, maybe let's change our number. Let's change the address, So, but I think what I want to also acknowledge is that Ruby is growing into this role. I feel like this is her raw beginnings.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that when people come back to this book, if they continue on with the series, they will see that this has not been an easy start. Much like if we are pushed into a role that we are not comfortable with, it's awkward. It's messy. There is a lot of fear. There is a lot of, overanalyzing. But I think as she becomes more comfortable in this role, she also has a natural curiosity, which I'm hoping to allow to blossom. So there's going to come a point where maybe there is a fear that's never going to go away unless you're trained to be brave.
Yeah.
There is a fear. That's who she is. But she might be curious. She might be like, why is this happening this way? So that I'm hoping will get a chance to blossom as she develops.
I think it's often if you're in unfamiliar situations, you start stumbling along and you need some time to find your footing. And I think that's what you're doing here.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I don't imagine like with normal people, it's like you had success. You're like, yes, nicely wrapped up, going to Hawaii. So I don't think you're gonna be too shocked by how she behaves. It's consistent with her, but hopefully there's going to be growth.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we agree that people like her do exist. I mean, no matter how much they try, something is always happening to them.
Yeah, that is. I mean, I look at my own first half of my life, being in a war, being in a triple disaster.
Exactly. How likely is that? I mean. Yeah.
How likely is that, right? I think there's going to be a combination of that. Like, I do think so as you see when the book, by the time it ends, she is sort of built some form of news about herself, in the eyes of people. And I think there could be a pressure coming from that angle of people expecting more. But yeah, she's accident prone. So, hey, I'm not going to be too surprised if she stumbles upon something again and goes, oh no, why me? Why did this happen again? So
this is something like forgetting her glasses and stumbling across a body, maybe.
That, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised though. I'm hoping, much like I have gone through my growing pains with glasses and I mean, like in a way when you're younger and you sort of don't see something as being like, hopefully she'll come to more peace with her appearance and everything. So
I think so, because what I've heard from my optician is that people wear glasses without the need to, because they hide their, wrinkles.
That's true. Yeah. So as she gets older, she might just be like, yeah, I am a fashionista with all my
See?
with all my glasses.
I wouldn't
Yeah,
have guessed
true.
it, but
Yeah.
what would I know?
But it's for some, it's an accessoire.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
And
yeah, I think it's more if there's like very good looking, handsome looking cops where she's like, oh, I don't know. You know, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe her inner insecurities might come through, but you never know.
Yeah, but that's charming about her.
Yeah.
It's not annoying,
Yeah.
it's charming.
It makes her lovely.
Yeah, exactly. Just like all of us. I mean, we all struggle from time to time with things like that, don't we? Yeah, absolutely. And Rima, what would be your advice for any other aspiring mystery author or author of novels in general?
Well, the one thing I would say is, draw from your own life experiences, because every individual, any person, like writing is essentially an extension of us, right? Much like singing or dancing it's an expression of who you are, and acting or any of these creative fields. There is skill, there is talent. But I think what really resonates with people, or that's at least what I believe, is when you're authentic to your own background, your own uniqueness as a human being. So like I said, there's a lot I drew from my own experiences to ground Ruby. So where people find her relatable, I think would come from that authenticity in which my life, experiences are reflected through her. Even if it's something that they have never had before or they have never experienced, they can still feel that there is something real. And I think that resonates. So I would say for people to be authentic, I think don't underestimate your readers, be open to criticism. Like I think through this journey, when people give me feedback, definitely, whether it's the editing process or at the end when readers are giving you feedback, be open to that, but then do what I think you feel is right for your vision. Like I would say, listen to feedback, but don't compromise your story, your message, your characters to make others happy, because you are not ever going to make everybody happy. That is an impossibility. And I think it's not, if you have that in mind as you're writing, you're gonna fail even before you begin.
Yeah.
And the ultimate thing I would say is just, I think, don't think of all those external things in the writing process. I think just like the way I am doing it. And, I started writing because I have such love for crime, for mysteries, for writing in general and reading as a reader. So I feel like I just want to be the best version of myself and give my best. And then we'll see. The rest, I think, hopefully, if you connect, if you're authentic, if you're relatable, people will come and find you.
And if Ruby will ever make it to the screen, who is going to play her?
Ooh, that's exciting if it does ever, because I like I told you, a lot of times I visualize things, so that is an interesting question. I think I would want somebody. I mean, if I was thinking before, maybe somebody else had asked me, and then I was thinking about it, and it could be someone obviously who's present. I would want them obviously to be of Indian origin. We have a lot of talented actors in Europe and in America, in India, that could play the role. But I think I would want somebody who fits the profile also, because I'm a plus size woman. I'm a woman of color. And I think if we could find somebody, maybe even someone new, who has that innocence or has that charm and is also probably hungry to do something like this and embodies the spirit of Ruby, I think I would be happy. I would be happy to see that person maybe bring her to life if that is in the destiny of this character. Yeah.
She's not someone taken from those fashion magazines, which is also refreshing.
Yeah. No, she's not. And I think one of the things that you might see with her, because like I said, a lot of like, at least the physicality, her personality is a quirk and the quirkiness I've exaggerated, but her physicality is based on me. And I have lived my life as a plus size person. That's not to say that Ruby doesn't care about health. And I know there's a lot of people who have different views, but I don't necessarily think that real human beings can become, you know what I mean, fashion model. Like we struggle. Everybody is struggling with our weight, with how we look. So she's going to remain someone. She's not, she has somebody who loves her, which is really at the end of the day what matters. She's not trying to people please. Yes, she's seductive. If she sees somebody like a Chris Evans, yes, of course, who wouldn't be like, wow, you know, but she's not trying to be a beauty queen. She's not trying to be anything other than who she is. So I would want the character to be real in that way.
And Rima, you've told us quite a lot about what will happen next, but can you tell us a little bit more, or what are we in for next in the very near future then? Or even further
there was a bit of, you've seen a bit of the teaser, I think, the prologue to the next book. So there is something that happens in Hawaii, of course, that pushes Ruby to go there. I mean, she plans to go there, but to kind of go there and get involved in another such crime mystery situation. And I feel like there is a third book, at least in terms of a concept or idea that I have planned, where she will be traveling to India and Kolkata, which is where, I also, I have not visited in a very long time, maybe almost 10 years, but she will be going there. And so you will see her land up in another situation and being, being her Ruby self, being like, I went there for a Bollywood dance and what is this? I thought I would have all this yummy food and now what is going on? So yeah, very typically Ruby.
Since you're such a big fan of Agatha Christie and her characters, a speculation. Is there something in the book for Ruby, who is also a huge fan of mysteries, a sort of, I know it sounds silly, but why not? Everything is possible. A sort of time travel, something kind of thing, or maybe a visit like, say, Agatha Christie's home, Torquay or something like that?
I would love to, like I said, I kind of want to keep this in the sense of the present time and sort of rolling as, we evolve. So I'm sure, I don't know about time travel, but I would say that there is a possibility. Like, I think I personally, as you saw, there was like a little bit of reference to spirits and ghosts and things of that type. There's always in life itself, you sometimes have things that seem a bit too much of a coincidence or supernatural. So I think while if there are elements of that, a little bit of shock or a little bit of a fantasy, but it would still be within the realm of reality. So whether it's a dream, whether it's a visit to where Agatha Christie is, whether, again, I haven't planned any of this to be honest perfectly, but whether there's an astrologer like Ruby encounters in this book or like a tarot reader, those things, as long as they're fun. And, again, like I said, I don't want to mislead anybody. It's all for entertainment. Yeah. Why not? Why not?
Have you seen the TV show Life on Mars?
No, I haven't.
Because that gave me the idea for the question I just asked. Okay. Because it's the original one it's about a police officer in present day London who has an accident or being on duty, and he lands up in hospital.
And he wakes up in the 70s.
And he wakes up in the 70s.
Interesting.
But it had a completely different way of doing things.
Yeah, that would be, what, the closest I can think of that is, again, if I have the honor and the privilege and the opportunity to continue this series with the love of the readers who have enjoyed Ruby, I do think there is a possibility I might visit her past. So you may see a little Ruby, because I do think Ruby, her being a child at heart and a child woman, or however you want to see it, and her love for Disney, I think there is something to be told, how she grew up and some of her experiences. And maybe you could see some of the genesis of how she became the adult, the woman that we see.
Yeah. Would be fun reading that.
Mm-hmm.
And also
Definitely.
already maybe a little, a teeny tiny mystery she's solving.
Maybe a teeny tiny, like who knows? I haven't thought of it yet, but there could be, some opportunities for her to get into the sleuth gear, and maybe that sort of started her love of mystery.
Absolutely,
stories,
absolutely.
The missing teddy bear.
Something like that.
Or a missing friend or something. Yeah.
Indeed. Rima, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know?
Well, there is nothing concrete. Obviously I'm working on my next book, which is more of a psychological horror mystery, Be Afraid of the Dark. And this is kind of based in upstate New York, but a very different story. So I'm exploring something, I think for the first time, with more Indian characters from India. And so I think once I've written a couple of chapters, I've written a synopsis. So once that's fleshed out, I think you'll see a very different writing style and a very different world that I'm going to explore with that book. And I'm very excited about that. There is Ruby Roy and the Hawaiian Mystery, where, like I said, I've started with the prologue, first chapter. So that's in the pipeline. And there is a possibility of an option for Ruby Roy, which I can't share too much because I am as new to this as probably most of us are. So I'm figuring it out as it goes. But if there is some good news and there is a future for Ruby, as you were saying on the screen, I'd be happy to share it with you guys. It'd be exciting to see.
That would be great. That would be wonderful. And dear listeners, you should absolutely read the lovely book about Ruby Roy and the Murder in the Falls. Yep. Absolutely entertaining, wonderful, lovely, cozy, mysterious, of course, and a tiny, teeny bit bloody, but still a wonderful, cozy mystery. So, Rima, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was such a nice, beautiful talk, and I really appreciate you guys giving me your time. We are in different time zones, so this has been wonderful to talk about Ruby with the two of you.
It is great to have you on, and we are looking forward to more Ruby Roy and also your mystery thriller, your psychological
fingers
thriller.
Crossed.
Fingers crossed.
You did enjoy this episode as much as we did? Then hit subscribe and don't miss the next episode. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. If you like to support us and buy us a coffee, you can do so via Buy Me a Coffee and other platforms. You can find all the necessary links in the description. Until next time.